Welcome, friends. Thank you for joining us in our continuing study of the book of Revelation. We're into the second half of the book. And in that second half of the book, we're looking at the subjects in more detail that were discussed in a general way in the first half of the book. We saw in the 12th chapter how that there was a great red dragon thrust out of heaven, and he was one that had 7 heads, 10 horns, had 7 crowns on his 7 heads, and he had a tail that was so dangerous and so powerful that with one swoop of it, he could cast down a third of the stars of heaven and cast them to the earth. And then we saw another picture of a radiant woman. She was arrayed with the sun. Her feet were on the moon. She was clothed with those things that were glorious in their appearance. And she was with child and about to be delivered of a child, a man-child, that was going to rule the world with a rod of iron. And the old dragon stood before her, seeking to destroy that child, for he was at enmity with divine. And the record declares that the man-child was born and was swept up by God into heaven, where he sits at the throne of God and rules with that rod of iron. And the woman fled away into the wilderness. They were given to her 2 wings like an eagle, and she flew into a wilderness where they were protected for her a place. And there she was protected for times and half a time. And the record declared that the dragon sought to persecute her, but she escaped from his persecutions. And he went away to make war with the rest of her seed. And the next part of the book of Revelation, the last half, is that deals with this war that the devil waged with the rest of the seed of the woman. And ultimately the victory, and then finally the judgment, the reward of those that live faithful even unto death with God eternal. When the devil was frustrated, he went away to work more with the rest of the saints of the woman, the seed of the woman, rather. And the scriptures declare that he sought help, stood by the sea, and emerging from the sea was a fierce beast. It looked like a leper. It was one that had feet like a bear. And it was one that had the voice of a lion, but it was different from all the other beasts. And as the writer describes this beast, the record tells us that as John looked at that beast, he too had 7 heads, 10 horns. He was red like the dragon. But he looked at the heads of that beast, and one of them had a death stroke, but it was healed. And as we look at this, we see the similarities between the devil, the dragon, and the beast out of the sea. Both of them were red. Both of them had 7 heads. Both have 10 horns. The variance is that the dragon had crowns on 7 heads. And the beast out of the sea had crowns, 10 of them, on his horns. There's another beast that came out of this picture in the 13th chapter of the book. And we'll be considering it another time. Our intent today is to look at this sea beast and see if we can to define regarding this sea beast and who particularly that he was. Are we to be looked for this still in some future time or present day, this sea beast that John is speaking about here? Or are these things that are things of the past that have been fulfilled? Remember, my friend, that when John wrote this letter, he received this revelation, and the scripture declared that he was to be one that was going to foretell of things that were shortly to come to pass. That's an important thing to remember. When we look at this sea beast, we find that the record declares that this sea beast was given authority over the saints of God, and he persecuted them, laid waste that was God's people. And all the people of the world worshipped him because the dragon had given power unto this sea beast, and he ruled with that power for wickedness that the devil had given unto him. Who is this sea beast? Who was this beast? Well, many individuals spend time and time searching to know what this beast was and who he was. Volumes upon volumes have been written speculating of the sea beast. And when the Lord comes, they're going to still be projecting that the sea beast is yet to come. But my friends, we can identify who this sea beast was. And it is our intent in this study today to look at that. And the place where we're going to go to find the key for all this is the book of Daniel. Strangely, the book of Daniel is not named in the book of Revelation, as no other prophet is. But over 200 or 300 prophecies are mentioned in this book. And yet, John does not identify any of those prophecies by name. But Daniel is our key figure as we look to try to determine who this sea beast was. Daniel lived 600 years before the events that we read about in the book of Revelation. 600, 700 years. He was, as a very young man, carried in exile from Judah to Babylon. And there he lived his life out. And although it was that he lived to see the exile lifted and Jews were allowed to go back to Judea and live again, apparently Daniel spent his entire life after he was exiled to Babylon living there. His prophecy is very important, for he prophesies of these events along with other events. When Daniel came, he was because that he was very intelligent and smart, chosen to study under those that were teachers that were chosen by Nebuchadnezzar, that they might be trained in all the ways of the Babylonians. And the king, Nebuchadnezzar, dreamed a dream. It was a dream that perplexed him. He said to all of his wise men, calling them together, I've dreamed a dream. If you can interpret it and tell me what it means, then I will reward you with great honors. And all of them said, okay, tell us what the dream was, and we'll tell you. He said, no, I've forgotten the dream. You tell me what I dreamed, then I'll know. You can tell me what the meaning of it was. But those rulers were ones, or those wise men were ones that were astonished. Nobody's ever asked us to do a thing like that. That's impossible. But Daniel, as a young man, had prayed with his three companions, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And God gave the vision to Daniel and what the dream meant. He told Nebuchadnezzar's attendants, tell the king, I'm ready to tell him what the dream means. And he was called it hurriedly unto Nebuchadnezzar. And he said, can you tell me what the dream was? Can you tell me what it means? And Daniel said, there isn't a man alive that can do what you ask, but God has shown to me what you dreamed and the vision and the significance of it. You saw, O king, a great image. Its head was of gold, its breast, its arms were of silver, its belly and thighs were of brass, its legs were of iron, feet of iron and clay. And, O king, you saw that image until you saw a stone cut out without hands from a mountain, and it smote that image on its feet, crushed it. And then that stone and the residue began to grow and grow and grow and became a great mountain and filled all the earth. Then he said to the king, this image represents 4 kingdoms to come. You, O king, with head of gold, with your kingdom. And after you go on to come into existence another kingdom, rest in arms of silver. And after it another kingdom, belly and thighs of brass. And another kingdom of gold. And this gold that you're going to see, this iron that you're going to see, that in the days of these kings, God's going to set up a kingdom that can never be destroyed, nor shall the sovereignty thereof be left to other peoples. But that wasn't the only dream that Daniel interpreted that had to do with the days that John lived. He told of another vision that came to him. It's recorded in the 7th chapter, and in this we find that Daniel looked and he saw coming out of the great sea 4 beasts. One of them was like a lion. One of them was like a bear. One of them was like a leopard. And another was diverse from all of the others of these. And this one that was diverse from all the others was given authority over the saints of God, and he ruled them for 42 months. When we look at that, we find that Daniel spoke of those 4 kingdoms. And then, in a later period of time, in the 9th chapter, he told about the coming end of the city of Jerusalem, of the 70 weeks, and how that it would begin numbering from the time that the decree was given that the exiles of Judah that were in Babylon would go home. And counting forward, symbolically, 70 weeks were to pass and ultimately end with the destruction of Jerusalem. And so we look at those, and those are all things connected. Now, Daniel does not mention about the 70 weeks. The principal reason is that dream and that prophecy had been fulfilled. It ended with the destruction of Jerusalem. And when Daniel wrote in AD 96 or thereabout, Jerusalem had been destroyed years before, 20 or 25 years before. But that kingdom that brought about the destruction of Jerusalem was that 4th kingdom. When we look at that 4th kingdom, we find that there was a great similarity between the beast that came out of the sea in Daniel 7, 4 of them, and the beast that came out of the sea in Revelation, the 13th chapter. Notice the similarity. The first beast was like a lion. The second beast was like a bear. The third was like a leopard. And the fourth was diverse from it all. In John, we see only one beast. And yet, notice how he's described. He looks like a leopard. He has the feet of a bear, a voice of a lion. He's diverse. What we're looking at in this kingdom is that 600 years have passed from the time that Daniel interpreted the dream for Nebuchadnezzar and then saw the vision himself of the beast coming out of the sea. And during that 600 years, 3 of those kingdoms have arisen, have flourished, and vanished away. The Roman kingdom is now in effect. And as we look at the Roman kingdom, we find that 4th kingdom, the one of Revelation 13, notice that it's a composite of these kingdoms before. It's diverse, but it has the features of a leopard, and of a bear, and of a lion. And as we look, we find that the three dispositions of that ruled those kingdoms prior to the Roman kingdom were those that were embedded and imbued in the attitude and the spirit of the Roman Empire. When we consider that, there is another point that we must call attention to, and that is Daniel is the key. It is the key to the understanding of the book of Revelation. There are similarities between Daniel and the book of Revelation that do not exist between Daniel and any other book, either in the Old Testament or the New. And that is time, described first as time, times, and half a time, 42 months, 1,260 days. 3 times? No. Same period of time, just described in different ways. Time, 1 year, 12 months. Times, 2 years, 24 months, 36. Half a time, 6, 42 months. In 42 months times 30 days in each month, well, that gives you, my friends, these 1,260 days. So we look now at all of that, and as we look at all of that, we're looking at the key that helps us to understand. This diverse beast in Revelation 13 is the last beast that was in Daniel's vision in the 7th chapter of Daniel. It is that last kingdom in the image that Nebuchadnezzar saw. For while Nebuchadnezzar's the kingdoms were represented by metals, the last was defined by iron. And while this beast that came out of the water in the book of Revelation 13 looked like a leper, a bear, and a lion, it had great iron teeth. And so we have identified these 4 kingdoms of old, rolled up in one because 3 have passed away. So, my friends, there is no point in arguing and looking for that beast out of the sea to emerge at some future time. It's come, and it's gone. Who was that beast? What was that beast? That beast, that diverse, that composite of the Babylonian, the Medo-Persian, Grecian, and Roman, was the Roman Empire. And when John wrote the book of Revelation, God's saints were being persecuted. Nero, who began the persecution in the city of Rome, intended to stamp out the remembrance of them. He died, and for a number of years, that persecution ceased. But it was begun again with intensity during the times of Domitian. And this is likely what and to which that the Revelator had reference to when one of the heads was that was smitten with a dead blow and was healed. Persecution stopped with the death of Nero, but it was revived again with a greater intensity during the time of Domitian. And so, God spoke. The kingdom that would be that diverse kingdom of Revelation 13, Daniel 7, was the Roman Empire. And as we look at the rest of the book of Revelation, as we continue our study, remember that fact. We'll be studying about something that has come, it has existed and flourished, but in God's prophecy and God's will, it has passed away. In our study, we're going to be looking at this second beast. It came out of the earth. It looked like a lamb. It had two horns, but it had the voice of a dragon. And we're going to be looking at that, and we're going to notice with a startling statement that individuals that lived during the time of this first beast, that there was a mark that was put upon them, and without that mark they couldn't buy or sell. The mark of the beast. And we'll talk about that in the next lesson. Thank you for watching. May God bless you and yours. And may you search out God's will and do it.